Lyle's always had dodgy hair.
All right, everybody, and welcome to episode 219 of the 9 Years podcast. I am Nick Draper, joined by the face of the BBC Sport website, Stuart Deacons, and with the fate of the season yet to be decided, and with some very important news breaking in the week, we thought it only right to sit down and put together a bonus, ad hoc, if you will, edition of the show to keep you abreast. I'm sorry, I'm so juvenile. Abreast with the situation at the club, and to keep you entertained as well, we hope. Later we'll be getting our heads around the ongoing negotiations as to how the 2019-2020 League One season should be concluded. But first, we'll offer our reaction to the news that the final construction contract has been signed, which means the new stadium at Plough Lane will be finished, will be completed, and is due to be completed by the 25th of October. The funding is in place now, for the most part, as Nick Robertson became a minority shareholder in the club, investing £2.5 million for a 10% stake in AFCW plc. The Dons Trust maintains overall control with over 75% of shares, but we are still waiting for some details as to how exactly this has worked with sales of ordinary shares and ordinary shares and what have you. We know that the Cedars crowdfunding raised about 7 or 8%. We know we had previous private investors up to about 9, just over 9%. So there's a little bit of maths to figure out there and what have you. But on the face of it, it's all good news. We've got an investor, we've got financing, and we've got the stadium over the line. Stu, your initial reaction to the news?
Yeah, a surprise. We obviously we knew the ground was sort of we thought it was going along as we expected. I know we thought August. We weren't too sure what the ground should look like at certain points during its development. But yeah, surprise, because I was we thought that we heard that something might be coming out later on in the week, and we thought it's probably obviously the loan, and we wondered what the rate would be. So to have someone come in as a minority shareholder was like, wow. We also know how much it is now as well, so it's not a small sum. It's a small sum compared to the guys' wealth of it. But I think it's a great move. I know people are going to be a bit concerned in terms of this didn't go through anything of a vote or stuff like that. But under Cedars, we did agree to give away a certain amount as long as the Dons Trust held its controlling stake. But you and I discussed this on the actual day it was announced, and from anything, the money's great, but also the fact that we've got somebody of his expertise. He built a business up from nothing, an online business. So you have to think his experience and knowledge is going to be really important. As someone from outside the football world, because we've always taken people from football, but actually business is business. So really pleased, but also surprised. Yeah,
as you mentioned there, Nick Robertson, co-founder of ASOS.com, the fashion website retailer that I can guarantee that you or I have never, ever used. But well, I know, yeah. Joel, I did ask my wife about it, because I'd heard the ASOS thing, but I didn't know what it meant, and she gave me a little bit of a sort of like a lesson on as seen on screen, as apparently what it stands for, and basically the business was started about giving stuff to stars to wear for nothing. I mean, it makes you chuckle, right? When you become famous, you don't pay for anything. So you're loaded, but you don't pay for anything. I remember Gaza saying we went to Italy, he basically went to every restaurant and he never bought a meal. So you're loaded, but you can't spend it either. Anyway, so yeah, and it built it up from that, and then of course you could then sell it because of course youngsters nowadays, if they see the latest heartthrob wearing it, I was trying to think of one then, but I can't think of one. For us, like they see someone like Joe Pigott wearing something, they might want to wear it themselves. I don't know if that's a comparison. You calling Joe Pigott a heartthrob?
Yeah, I know. When I linked him in with that, I was like, oh.
I'm not sure I've heard the phrase heartthrob used since about 1992. But anyway, so ASOS.com, he co-founded that one. He was originally born in Dorset. He now resides in Wimbledon Village. That's how he's come to get involved with us. As you say, he's got a personal fortune. In 2016, a personal fortune quoted to be around £220 million. So there is a lot of money here. Stu, you referenced there the percentage of ownership. Of course, this comes under it does technically come under the resolution that was passed in that shares could be sold via the Cedars crowdfunding. shares at that point. Didn't specify it. So we have the two types of shares that you could invest in. We have the 3-vote shares, of which the Dons Trust controls 100% of. And then we have the ordinary shares worth 1 vote. And that's where we've sold in the past about 9% of those. We assume that the Cedars crowdfunding were the 1-vote shares. The Dons Trust Board are in the process of answering us in the form of a Q&A document that they'll be releasing hopefully early next week. And we've also got someone from the Dons Trust Board, a Dons Trust Board representative, to speak to us at some point next week as well, to clear up all these little wranglings and allay any concerns, because there have been a few concerns out there. But as we said on the face of it, the main thing is that Nick's come in, given us the financing to get the stadium over the line. Now, by my maths, we're still around £3 million short, which we assume is going to be the bank loan.
Yeah, well, it opens up a different door now, doesn't it? So we know Nick Robertson was part of the initial 3 people that were looking to purchase a controlling share for the 7.5 million. Oh no, sorry, the 30%, wasn't it? But that would, we know now how it go. So we know he was one of those people. So he obviously still was very interested. The other 2, for whatever reason, have dropped out. You'd think now a £3 million loan is doable. It probably might be at better rates as well. But also you have to think, is there anyone else out there? So we've always said before, there's a lot of rich Wimbledon fans. Most of them live in a village up the hill, but there's a lot of rich Wimbledon fans. So you have to look at it. If potentially there's any more money or many, if we can still control the club and still have a stake. I'm alluding to the 51%, which we've always looked at, the German model, 51% ownership of the fans. Potentially, do we have anyone else out there that we're talking to that potentially could put a similar sum in? Because let's be fair, it'd be, if we can get money without getting a loan in, it would be even more than what we felt before, because you don't want to be saddled with debt, and you don't want to be saddled with debt in this economy. So you have to wonder whether there's anyone else that's loaded, and I mean seriously loaded, that might put that remaining bit in. But if not, we'll get a £3 million loan. But the main thing is we signed that contract and they will continue working, the ground's ours now.
Yeah, and as we said, 25th of October, the completion date, hopefully in time for the new season when fans will be allowed back into football stadiums. But as we say, happy days, and we'll hear more about Nick and the deals of his investment early next week. Now, before we move on, Stu, just for a little bit of something different for the podcast, I have a quick trivia question for you.
Lovely.
We are recording this on the 30th of May, which was the date in which, well, many things happened on the 30th of May. Some of them were formed on the 30th of May officially. But obviously in 2016 we had the League Two playoff final victory at Wembley when, who scored the first goal? I can't remember. Couldn't have been someone particularly memorable.
Nah, some bloke with dodgy hair, I believe. It was there the season after. No, not the season after. It was there a little while after and got another playoff win, didn't he?
He did. I forgot about that. Yes.
Yeah, I saw some pictures the other day. Again, with more dodgy hair. Lyle's always had dodgy hair.
Can't believe you're criticising Lyle Taylor. But yes, actually, the symmetry about his playoff final wins at Wembley, I believe, were that we beat Plymouth 2-0 in ours, having lost to Plymouth 2-0 on the opening day of the regular league season. And then his was a 2-1 win over Sunderland with Charlton. And of course, on the opening day of that season, Charlton lost 2-1 to Sunderland. So, strange way that things tend to happen. Anyway, on that playoff final victory on the 30th of May 2016, there were 3 players that played against us, or were in the squad, I should say, for Plymouth that day, that have, at one point in their careers, played for AFC Wimbledon. Can you name those 3 players?
I'm trying to think now who was in that Plymouth squad. Who played for Plymouth now or in that squad?
They were in that squad for the final, Wembley.
But now play for us.
Or played for us at some point.
What a question. I'm trying to think now of who was in that. I know some players that I would have minded playing for us from that squad. 3? I can't remember if it was 1.
You can. There'll be one that you'll be kicking yourself because he came to play for us in League One.
Oh, that's going to worry me, isn't it?
But in fact, 2 of them came to play for us in League One. But one of them, I would think, arguably would have stuck in your mind more as a Plymouth player.
Wow, what a question. You do realise that football was finished for 3 months. I can't remember anything about this season, let alone I'm trying to think now who. Oh, let's have a think. Who's playing for us now or played for us before? My mind has gone a blank. This is really going to worry me now. 3 players and I can't even think of one.
I'll give you the answers. You will kick yourself, and I'll save what I think you'll. I'll save the name I think you'll kick yourself most about until last. All right. But the 3 are Ben Purington.
Oh,
Craig Tanner.
that don't count.
Yes, it does. I've got his shirt. I sponsored his kit somehow. And finally, Jake Gervais.
Hey, look, I'm trying to put these things out of my mind. So I forgot we had Jake Gervais. Do you know what I mean?
How can you forget we had Jake Gervais?
I think a lot of people have forgotten with that. But
Sorry, do you need me to speak up? You're cupping your ear as if you can't hear me there.
no, I'm really. Yeah. To be fair, the first one I probably wouldn't have got. I can't remember that with Ben. Although
He was on the bench.
And it's funny how he left under a cloud, didn't he? We were absolutely gutted, and then we ended up to get a better one from. I can't remember from loan now, but yeah, Birmingham.
Yes, Birmingham City. Steve said, of course. Yes.
Yeah.
How all's well that ends well, but on a nice sort of symmetry, I guess Ben Purington scored in the playoff final for Charlton in that Sunderland win that you referenced there, didn't he?
He did.
Anyway, right. EFL matters then. So, here's the situation. We don't really know what the situation is because the Football League are still trying to determine how they're going to finish their league seasons across all 3 divisions. There is a meeting of all clubs on Monday the 8th of June to determine the resolution of the season and whether this is done via unweighted points per game with no fixtures played except for playoffs, or whether all fixtures are played out to a conclusion behind closed doors. And as I say again, that will involve playoffs. The Championship they wish to play on and finish their season behind closed doors. League 2 want to curtail the season and have it decide on unweighted points per game. And League 1, as we discussed previously, is undecided with about a handful of clubs really pushing hard to carry on playing. There's a further complication in all these matters, Stu, and that is promotion and relegation. And that's going to be another thing we have to factor into this. So currently as it stands, whichever option is chosen, behind closed doors or points per game, promotion and relegation stay in place. However, I don't know what she is at West Ham. She's not a co-owner. She's like a chief executive at West Ham, Karen Brady. I'm not sure the precise role that she has there. She's raised the issue in the Premier League, which of course is still carrying on and has got dates to resume, that relegation goes ahead as normal. But she's now discussing the prospect of a second wave of an outbreak, which will require a second lockdown, which might again prevent fixtures from being completed behind closed doors. And she wants, in that event, a rule to be brought in that sees no clubs relegated on points per game. Obviously acting in a bit of self-interest here, but it does have a knock-on effect for the Football League, doesn't it, if that was to happen and relegation from the Premier League wasn't to go ahead.
Yeah, I think behind all this, I think we've always been concerned about why the EFL have been dragging their heels. It feels like, what we now, we're beginning of June nearly when most players are on their holidays, and yet we still can't even decide what we're going to do with the season, bearing in mind that our last game was against Bolton on the 7th of March. So it's sort of like trying to understand why. And I think when you look at it really deeply is that the EFL are going to be guided by the English Premier League, simply because of that's where the money is, and whatever happens within that will sort of some sort of precedence from it. Yeah, Karen Brady's been vocal on this. She's obviously got a weekly slot in the Sun, which she was the first one that was sort of said about the fact that she wanted the league voided, or she put doubts about whether we can continue. Obviously, the Bundesliga have now started, and it looks to be going well, and the Premier League now have agreed too. But what they couldn't agree on was that if there was another stoppage for a lockdown, a second wave, or whether a squad couldn't complete a fixture, or there was some sort of breakdown, what would happen? Because if there was a second lockdown, there's no way that we'd be able to go again because of the contracts, etc. So what they're going to do, they had a 5-hour meeting on Monday. What they're going to do this Thursday is they're going to then discuss what would happen in that event. And there is a mixture of views. I think one thing we need to be very straight with is that everyone's looking after themselves. anyone that says it's about integrity, there's no integrity. It's all about looking after themselves. That's the bottom line of this one. And West Ham are no different. But there has to be 14 of the clubs have to agree any motion. And they are looking at whether relegation should be included. So I think what will happen is if they decide that nobody is relegated, which I sort of feel there's a strong... I feel there could be a chance of that because of the finances coming out of the Premier League is astronomical. Then I think the EFL will open that option up for the other leagues because that option isn't part of... that option isn't available, and which is why Tranmere have been so vocal. And from reading from the EFL statement or some rumourings around it, Tranmere have threatened legal action, and that's where the EFL are very cautious and have given them additional time to give some other ideas.
Well, yeah, the EFL have said they'll still take suggestions from clubs up until the 2nd of June. Now, that's Tuesday coming. You say the Premier League's meeting to discuss further the issue you've mentioned with Karen Bray there is not until the 4th of June.
Yeah.
So again, we're still looking at really almost trying to make decisions or have clubs come to agreements without full information still in front of them. So the EFL can say 2nd of June, you can talk to us up until that point, but after that point, we'll formalise arrangements. If then the Premier League chuck in another thing on the 4th, then clubs are probably going to go, well, once again, what we're dealing with here has changed. We're not dealing with the full information. And then you open up a whole other can of worms as to what's available and what can be done.
Yeah, this is... I listened to another podcast, believe it or not. I can't believe people listen to podcasts.
I thought this was the only podcast you listened to, even though you are on it. Anyway.
I still listen to it because I'm vain. But I have been listening to two. Darren McAnthony, it's been in the press a lot. He's been doing weekly ones, which I don't agree with everything he says, but he's giving some light to what's being discussed. Of course, it's from his angle, but that side of it, and also The Price of Football, which is a really, really good podcast if you want to really understand the basic financial situation, which is massive at the moment. But it's interesting because the EFL allowed League Two to have a vote, and League Two agreed to curtail the season, but to have no relegation. However, EFL now have said that can't be possible because the FA now want relegation, and the EFL don't want to have any leagues not having relegation, which now brings Stevenage into a issue where they're threatening to sue because at the bottom of League Two, Macclesfield failed to play a game or play players.
Yeah, I
something's
think
still outstanding.
They failed to pay. Well, they failed to pay players, and the players they went on strike, didn't they? Or they refused to play a certain fixture.
Yeah, and nothing's been decided on that. So at the moment, you have League Two that were allowed to vote, but actually their vote is not now going to be, it's curtailed, but they have to have relegation. You've got the Championship who are wanting to play. And you have us in the middle. It's a crazy situation. I think the problem you got is there's not an actual financial... One of the things that Darren McAnthony did say, which I found really interesting, was that they've been asked to vote on something that they don't actually know the full financial cost. So there's been a lot of vocals about how much testing is going to cost, and this is where the price of football was quite interesting because Darren McAnthony said there's potentially clubs could lose up to could cost up to 250,000. And actually, there's a financial expert. His actually name escapes me, but he's really good. And actually, he's had a Twitter debate saying that figure is really wrong. So I think Darren McAnthony is really putting figures in. But Darren McAnthony was saying there's no figures being actually said. So they said that if we're going to stop the season, actually, what is the financial cost? Because Sky Sports could ask for the solidarity money might not be paid in full. There could be a rebate. I don't know if you noticed on the part of the Premier League, there was a worry that even though they were going to play, Sky Sports would ask for a rebate in the region of 300 million. That's been negotiated. I think it's half that now. 300 million? 300 million rebate, because what they're saying is that they still haven't fulfilled their contract. Their contract is to have... Do you remember back in... Of course you will. But when Italy had problems, when they had the clubs could pay their own, they had their own TV deals, and what happened was no one turned up. The attendances dropped massively in Italy, and actually what they found was, and what we can see now is actually crowds make a big part of football. So what Sky is saying is actually that's not what's happening now. It's like there's no fans there. There's no that sort of drama, that sort of thing there. So I think because there was a break of a contract in somewhere, it might be a case that they're playing late or something. Sky Sports were able to claim some money back, but they reduced it by half. It's not dead on 150 million, but it's not far short of that. So what the argument is with the Darren McAntney is that we can potentially, there might be a rebate from Sky, but we don't know what it is. The EFL are asking them to vote on something that all they know is how much it will cost to continue the season, but they have no idea what the cost could be for not playing the season out. And the EFL were supposed to get information to the clubs to have an informed vote. So I think out of this, I think the EFL I haven't been impressed with their leadership, and Rick Parry's just come in, hasn't he? Yes, all right, he's been dealt a real horrible card, but I just find it unbelievable that we're still in June, and we're waiting for the English Premier League to make a move before we know what's going to go on.
In terms of the financial implications, Doncaster, you say, estimate in matchday revenue alone, they're going to miss out on about £400,000. So you're looking at that as being a bare minimum figure, and any other loss of earnings, for failure to complete fixtures in front of fans, is going to be higher than that. There's also the element of, if we do play, the extra charges of COVID testing. Clubs in the Championship, it's £210,000 per game. I mean, I'm assuming that is per home. I'm assuming that's per home fixture. I don't know if that's if they have to test their own players per their fixtures, or whether the home club takes the bullet for the games that are being played. I'm not sure.
Was that per game or per season?
I read it was quoted per club per game.
Wow.
It said in the Times this week. So again, we're talking insurmountable costs, and that sort of leads on to. We'll come on to what we've said and what Joe Palmer said and how that factors into that. I wanted to ask you about leadership, though, as you've referenced there with Rick Parry and the EFL. I mean, is it a failure of leadership? We can't proceed without agreement from clubs, at least to a 51% majority. So you have to have discussions, you have to have votes, and it's almost impossible to reach consensus across 70 legitimate EFL clubs across 3 divisions. But at some point, instead of, taking suggestions still onto the 2nd of June, seems to me bending too much. And sometimes when you're in charge of things, you've got to be firm and forthright and say, this is option 1, this is option 2, that is it. Work it out. What's the best or least worst option of them? So do you reckon repercussions are going to follow once we're over the other side of this and into next season, potentially for Rick Parry?
Well, I think the problem with the EFL is they're really frightened of any legal action, and there's 2 clubs that have threatened it: Peterborough and Tranmere. They might not be alone. I think Tranmere are more serious than Peterborough. I think Darren McAntney threw his toys out of pram early on, but he's retracted and said he's not going to sue because he doesn't think it's fair to sue clubs that could be in trouble. But the fact that we still have no decision, because Rick Parry had suggestions. He's knocked out the Tranmere suggestion of they put a graph together, didn't they, about fluctuations and measurements that, of course, Tranmere put a proposal together. Everyone knows that, so they don't get relegated. Why would they bother if it was, we're still going to get relegated on this anyway? But the fact that EFL and Rick Parry have said, actually, do you know what, we want more suggestions. How many more suggestions can they get? It's just, if it's points per game, then that's a very simple calculation, whether it's weighted or not. I think, do you know what I find the irony of this, and I've said this a few times, that we've got one team, and we know we love this team anyway, because they normally can't wait to play football. When they play football and roll around for a little while. But, Wickham are going to benefit. So Wickham are going to go from 8th to 3rd. So they will qualify in the first, the top playoff place. So they'll have home advantage on the second leg, and they play a team that will finish 6th. If it goes by points per game, that would be Fleetwood. Their game in hand was a game they couldn't play because of, I think, Coventry's FA Cup run. So that game in hand, which will knock them into 3rd place, above Peterborough, which knocks them out, will be against Coventry, who are top of the form table. If we look at the last 6 games, Coventry won 5, drawn 1 game. So, but what it means is Wickham will get 1.73 points for the game against Coventry. Coventry will get the same, so it's actually more than a 3-point game, which, again, make up that what you want on that. But Wickham have said that they're not prepared to play, however, they will play the playoffs. Okay, so that's my argument about points per game. So you've got someone who's saying, well, we want to vote not to play in this situation, but we're playing another situation. You either want to play or you don't want to play. And I think the biggest problem we've got with the EFL at the moment is everyone is voting. Everyone's being given a vote to suit their agenda. I get that. But then, of course, you're going to get everyone voting in different ways. And we're no different. We've come out and said... The quote's a weird quote. I think what Joe was saying was that we don't want to make ourselves in a worse position. And I think it's more financially than a league position. But let's not be fair. If Joe had come out and gone, we don't want to get relegated. We don't see a point in playing. We don't know if our players are going to be fit enough. We actually don't know whether we've got contracts long enough. You know, at the moment, if we committed to play, we potentially could get relegated, but not because of the strength of the team, but because of what's available. I get that. If it, you know, that's what. There's no integrity. The integrity is just a laugh. Everyone's looking after their agenda, but Wycombe is a really interesting one. Like I say, they're happy to play the playoffs, but they don't want to play the season to get into the playoffs. Make of that what you will.
It's difficult in Wycombe's sense because, as you say, whichever option is taken, playoffs will be going ahead behind closed doors. So it's going to happen whichever way you take it. Wycombe, I guess you could argue, best of both worlds. Perhaps,
but they might not qualify for the playoffs. If they play their 9 games, they might not qualify. The amount of food, I don't know if anyone follows Bayo, right? But Bayo, there's no way Bayo is fit. Like Bayo is eating like I know I can comment. But my wife said this to me the other day. There's no way. Do you remember Bayo coming back from America? Do you remember the first season? Reportedly come back in 2 stone overweight. Bayo is going to do that again. So what I'm saying is, if Wycombe play now, they might. Bayo's a big player for them, very big player. I just think that's where the points per game argument is a little bit. I don't like it.
In terms of our own situation, yes, we'll be looking. We would stay up on points per game, and I think the financial hit. There would be a financial hit of completing the season on the pitch, which would cause us a lot of troubles. Not least the fact we've got nowhere to play. Which is going to be an issue. Yeah. We don't have a stadium to play in, so there's that issue as well. There's lots of that. If it is determined by points per game, I'm thinking that's probably what's going to happen in the end. We would stay up by 0.06 points per game. Yes, it's not fair on Tranmere. Yes, Tranmere have come up with their own options, some complicated mathematical formula that would see them stay up, but then they still don't want relegation to happen. It's just there's too many variables. As we say, there's no best case scenario for everybody. The point you make about playing the fixtures out is a very interesting one. There's a couple of things in this. One is contracts end on June 30th, but we know they can be extended for a month if in exceptional circumstances to July the 31st. The issue there still is that if you do not decide that you are going to play until June the 8th at the earliest, how on earth can you get players ready to complete 9 fixtures by July 31st, given the fact that we're not back in training yet? Only Championship clubs are back in training as it stands. League 1 and League 2 are not. They need good exposed players. They're saying they want at least 3 weeks minimum. You then can't really squeeze. You're looking at squeezing 9 games into a month. And whilst that's not unheard of in the past where teams have had a backlog of fixtures, cup games and all the like of it, we have to be realistic in terms of the environment we're in, especially when it comes to players that are potentially not as fit as they should be, and injuries. In the Bundesliga, their average, for a round of fixtures in the Bundesliga, the average amount of injuries per game is 0.27. Within 2 weeks of, we'll call it lockdown football, that changed to 0.88, 3 times as likely to get injured, purely because clearly they've not had enough time to get themselves match fit, which is different from being physically fit. There is a match fitness involved, and our players aren't going to have that. All the evidence points to actually playing games as a non-starter. It's just not viable, is it?
No, and you'll be, you know, it probably sounds I'm contradicting myself in terms of that I don't think point per game is fair. It's not. You know, in my opinion, I've been quite vocal about that, as you know. I just don't think a calculation is right in this type of season. However, I also don't think playing is correct either, because ultimately we don't. It's 3 months is a long time. You know, these players. We spoke to Joe Piggott, didn't we, the other day? Who've been out for a cycle ride, and they're keeping themselves ticking over. But it ain't the same as, you know, training and stuff like that. I think one of the things I did read in the paper today, which has not got much publicity, but there was what the government has said, or HMRC have said, for footballers and for cricketers, Don't know why cricketers need to train anyway. They just wait for tea, don't they, on cake? But what they're saying is that they can train. So, there was an argument that to bring players out of furlough would then cost clubs additional money. So, you're talking about the 3 weeks, 4 weeks, potentially. I think the Premier League went 4 weeks, didn't they? Which I think is fair. If we brought the players out of... if the players are training, they can stay in furlough, so the clubs can still claim furlough. And HMRC have said that the furlough will stay in place as long as they are not making money or working in a way to make money for the club. So they can still train right up until the first game of, if it was to play. I'm not saying we should play, but that argument about, we're going to have to bring our players out of furlough and that's going to cost us wages. It won't cost them any money during training. I don't know how much that's going to save them, but they sort of said that. I don't think we can play. Even the playoffs, I feel for players like teams like Oxford. Actually, I don't feel for teams like Oxford. I can't think of any team that I like in the playoffs. Okay, I don't feel sorry for any teams in the playoffs. I can't think of one of I like of them. But they're going to go into a playoff semi-final behind closed doors, unfit. And no form, because 3 months. It's going to be like a pre-season competition with a serious prize at the end of it. And the injuries, Karen Brady was actually saying in our article that a lot of injuries for Premiership teams already, which is when she was going down about the squad size can be as low as 15. So there normally has to be a match day squad, doesn't it? I can't remember what the Premier League say, but it's definitely not 15. But they're basically saying that you have to have a minimum of 15 players, and it doesn't matter if they are first teamers, under 21s, under 23s, you have to put a squad out. There's so many things. Liverpool could win the league after 2 games, put all the kids out. They've done that before. So the only integrity and stuff like that could happen in League One. They're not going to play. But I'll go on record, and I'm unbiased, I'm a Wimbledon fan. I don't feel comfortable Tranmere getting relegated. I really don't. Football's about rules and fairness, and I know there's just no fairness in Tranmere being relegated by 0.06. It's just... I just can't... I would be really disappointed if Tranmere still got relegated. Not saying we should get relegated, because we don't deserve to get relegated either, which is why I think only the team should get relegated at Bolton and Southend. They're well out of the equation.
I can foresee the losers in this scenario being the National League playoff teams, because I can see Barrow coming up to take the place of Bury, and then them saying, sorry, there's only one promotion, and then you've got a hole, and Neil Ardley, obviously Neil Cox, affected by that. Like I keep saying, it's not a case of best option, it's least worst option. Unfortunately, I'm with you, I can't choose either. If we have, we should avoid it. I know there's going to be people saying the finances involved in non-completion of the season because of things like rebates from TV companies and what have you. But I thought immediately that was the way to go. It's been dragged on, like you say, now for 3 months. It's going to carry on for another couple of weeks at least. The issue all comes down to, as you said, we're taking our lead from the Premier League, and they've decided to go back. The FA Cup is going to be played out to a conclusion as well, and once that's happened, that changes everything, because you can't void the season for the EFL because of promotion and relegation.
It's all about, the thing is, it's interesting what you just said about a national conference. It's all about power, isn't it? So what I mean by that is, English Football League are overpowered by the English Premier League. So it's English Premier League, what they make decision-wise impacts what the English Football League do. But realistically, the English Premier League don't really care too much about the English Football League because they're their own entity. Do you know what I mean? However, the English Football League don't really care too much about the conference. Because, and you're probably right, actually. Actually, it's a really good point you just said that, because it probably will, if it push comes to shove and there's no relegation, we will probably say there's only one team coming up, because the National Conference won't push the boat, because they know they want to get more people promoted. They don't want to start upsetting the English Football League. They also know that their member clubs are going to be in a serious position if they start playing political games. So you're probably right. The loser will be a National Conference. And let's not forget, the FA said about there must be relegation promotion. However, they closed down non-league from below I think it was Ishmael League, wasn't it?
Yeah, step 3 to step 7.
So promotion and relegation doesn't count down there. So it's power plays, it's where the money is. You're probably right. It's a really good point, actually. That's probably where the hurt. I sense there's going to be no relegation from the Premier League. It's my gut feeling, or there's going to be some. I think that's what they're holding out for. The Premier League are frightened of losing money, especially when the economy is absolutely crashing.
just makes me muse. If there's going to be no relegation from the Premier League at all, then, as you say, the two main drivers for the Premier League to complete their season are TV money and the awkward, unfortunate situation that Liverpool. I think there'd be a lot less back and forth about this whole thing had there been a genuine title race with clubs a couple of points adrift of each other, no clear winner there. But the fact that it's Liverpool that are so far ahead, given the history, given everything that's happened, I think it does change the dynamic of the argument somewhat. But if you get rid of relegation, then there's literally, in my opinion, get rid of relegation, then there's no argument or no justification to continue the season in any way, shape or form, and it should have just been voided.
Don't Liverpool play? Was I right in thinking Liverpool play Everton very soon?
Yeah.
Or were due to?
They're due to play Everton, yeah.
So the argument was, if the results went their way, they could win the league at Goodison.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? So they said Liverpool can't play any big games at home. There's something coming out about the police, isn't it, saying that?
The police are trying to, there's lots of things with the police because there's lots of confusion over this. I think there were 12 games in which have been identified as being potentially problem fixtures in terms of people congregating at the stadiums, and they wanted them to be moved to be neutral venues. I don't know why, unless they're going to keep those neutral venues a secret, but these things always get out. I don't know how they think it's going to make any difference where you play it.
Can you imagine that? A secret, and they're now playing at Wolves. Let's go to Wolves.
Exactly, everyone's going to find out where it'll be. I just don't know how they think or how they intend on this actually being a thing. Some of the fixtures involved in that list of 12 games, I swear it was 12 games, there were some really random ones, like Manchester City Newcastle was highlighted as a potential problem fixture. No one could figure out why. And these are the ones that are being looked at being moved to neutral grounds. So yeah, Everton Liverpool, I think, was one of those, but all of Liverpool's home games were, because they could be ones where they win the league, and that's when people are going to, like Jurgen Klopp saying in the paper, that, he said he heard something that Liverpool have the best fans at home, and he says he now wants them to have the best stay-at-home fans. But it's not going to happen. Best will in the world, given which club it is, given the history.
Hey, look, Joe, we're living in dreamland, aren't we? And we're not going to get onto a political debate about this, but lockdown eases up on Monday, but we all know it eases up the moment that Dominic Cunningham's got away with what he got away with and breached the rules. Whether he did or didn't, we all know lockdown is over. It's all based on trust, and you're asking to trust that Liverpool fans, and this isn't a dig about Liverpool fans, but any fans, you're asking fans of a club that haven't won the league for 30 odd years, especially, can you imagine being one on Goodison? But the game, have you watched any of the Bundesliga games at all on TV?
No.
It's just the most weirdest thing. I've sort of started to like it because I'm missing my football. I wasn't a couple of weeks ago, but I'm really missing my football now. I'm watching it, but I'm sort of laughing to myself because they wear masks on the way through, and then as soon as they get on the pitch, they take the mask off and they all join each other and header and stuff like that. They're not. It's really weird seeing like Borussia Dortmund's ground empty. Seeing Edison Park empty for a Merseyside derby for Liverpool to win it. I do feel like Sheffield United. Sheffield United could qualify for Europe. Now got to play. We all know the running games, whatever league you play in, are the hardest. Sheffield United have somehow now got to keep that 5th place, haven't they, or to get into Europe, which they might not be able to because they might not be able to fly into Europe next year. I know why it's on. I know why it's being done, but it's going to be interesting. Look, let's hope this is a one-off. We look back in a year's time and go, do you remember the day that Liverpool won the title at Edison, whatever it is?
They won it at the home of the former Brazilian goalkeeper.
Yeah. Goodison Park.
All right, yeah.
Where I get that from? Yeah, they're great trivia questions, but it's just not football as we know it.
No, you make a good point about the face masks, the substitutes as well, because that was pointed out by Luka Milivojevic, the Crystal Palace. I'm going to say his position is penalty taker. I think he's a midfielder, but I know him as the guy that scores penalties. And he made that point, and he said basically it's being done because it's being seen to do the right thing, even though it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And hey, look, that's a rant I could have about society in general, but I'll save that for another day. In conclusion, Stu, as you say, we've come in for a little bit of flack for our approach, because, as you said, Joe Palmer made the comment about things that could leave us in a worse position, and that's, again, a quote that perhaps has been taken out of context, and we know that it's discussing the finances involved, and that's why we would look at not finishing the season on the field as opposed to points per game. But it does leave us all with an uncomfortable feeling. Unfortunately, as we say, this whole situation, I think there's only losers. There's no winners from this one, and it's a sad situation, as somebody once sang.
I think what would be sad about this is if there's still legal action at the end of this, because it would just, even though I wouldn't blame Tranmere for doing it, I don't know who they're going to sue. They can't sue us because it weren't us. It weren't our fault that we got them relegated. I just think it'd be really, really sad. You know, you look at the Scottish League, for argument's sake, Hearts. Hearts are doing it differently though. I give Hearts credit. They've got relegated, and if anyone knows the football scene in Edinburgh, Hearts and Hibs are massive clubs in Edinburgh. But Hearts got relegated, but they're now asking to make the Scottish Premiership League bigger, to accommodate them from not getting relegated. So they've gone a different angle of going, well, actually, you relegated us, but actually, I think let's make the league bigger so actually we can still be in it. I don't know. I can just see legal stuff coming out of it because that's why it's delaying it so much. But for us, look after number one. I wouldn't want us to play now.
Nor me. And on that note, I think it brings us to an end of this week's show. Stu, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you to everybody for listening. Keep an eye on that website, ninewirespodcast.org, for more news and audio updates from us over the coming weeks. But for now, that is it. That is us done. Alexa Bliss, bag first, milk last, and we will speak to you again at some point in the future.